Previously on Docs Outside the Box, that week of Easter, the Student National Medical Association has its annual medical education conference. The students had a lot of great questions.
They asked us about prenup agreements. I had to take it personal and talk about me and you. This is a delicate subject, right? Everybody, me and Renee, we don't have a prenup agreement.
I take you for all your coins.
I tried to get a prenup agreement initially on her, but it wasn't going to work.
You didn't have anything neat.
Well, listen, guys. So I did also make it clear it's not just about $300,000 that you're going to make. It's about how much you keep. And I think we've learned, us being 10 years in now, it's really not about how much you make.
Yeah.
You want to stay commensurate with how everybody else is doing, but it's the long-term play is really keeping as much money. So we talked about, what the IRS does and what, all these taxes can do. And that was the whole point of me and Love talking about specifically the things that we do to kind of play the IRS game to help decrease our tax burden. And then, comparing that to the others, what they do, right? Super, interesting.
Love did a great, Dr. Love did a really great breakdown of like, if you make this much money, this is how much, in taxes that you would have to pay. And the students' eyes just kept getting wider and wider and wider.
He did the bracket.
Yes, when he was talking about the tax brackets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he did the tax bracket, which, surprise, everybody listening to the show, whether you are a PA, whether you are a doctor, whether you are a nurse practitioner, even whether you're a respiratory therapist, you probably going to be in that 30-something percentile.
Yeah.
Or 30% range. So all the students were like, what?
They just kept, my God.
They were tripping. Remember, they were all tripping when they thought FICA was a big deal. It's like, all right, like FICA ain't nothing compared to what you really going to pay.
Yeah.
So
it was
we
amazing.
Also talked about the gender pay gap also.
Yes.
Right. We talked a little bit about the gender pay gap. Remember, like there's studies that show that, for dollar for dollar or training for training, a woman will get paid like 10K less, even more compared to her, compared to a male counterpart.
In the same role.
He'll come in the same role, the same amount of years, he'll get paid more. Right. And then eventually over the time, over the several years and into the decades, that number gets closer and closer together. But you got to remember, this number compounds, right? That's money that you can put to get a house. That's money that you can put into the stock market. That's money that you can put to work for you that you're missing out on, right? And so we talked about that. We talked about academic pay versus community pay, right? So if you're an academic physician, what that means versus being a community phisian.
Yeah.
That was really interesting also. So
no, it was a really great, it's a really great session. Like you said already, the students were extremely engaged and engaging as well. And I hope that SNMA has more opportunities like this, for students, right? Like I talked a little bit earlier about there's just such a dearth of information in medical school. And I think you make a good point in that, where there's that kind of gap, SNMA should see that type of opportunity and really just, go for it. Because there's so
I'm doing
more.
This.
What is that?
I'm doing this because we should be sprinkling it in.
Yes.
You sprinkling this knowledge in so that they are more and more exposed to it, right? So the first year will continue to hear this message all through the 4 years of school. Third years, fourth years, they can hear this, and they can say, oh, I remember hearing about that at a conference, at the SNMA conference. Right. I should negotiate. I should invest a little bit of some money. Yeah. I should live on a budget, Oh yeah, no doubt.
I would love to see a session, on paying off your student loan debt. Just like lots of creative ways to pay off your student loan debt, because, so students still don't know, but there are students who still don't know about PSLF. There's still students who don't understand, kind of what it means to, have a certain amount of interest and how that interest will compound, over time.
That right there, I put on the shoulders of the medical school.
I do.
The medical schools.
But what do they care?
The medical schools have failed. I get it. But you could care. Okay. And if they don't care, that's fine. But I'm telling you right now, med schools, if you're listening, you are failing the medical students, right? Because when you have that little exit interview,
Mm-hmm.
which for the most of us, the exit interview is not really an interview. It's just a question, a paper that you
Mm-hmm.
sign to say that you got told about how much in student loans you got. And then that's it, right? That's it. You just get told, okay, this is how much in student loans you got, sign this paper, and that's it. But you fail your students when you don't put them in a position to really be knowledgeable on how they're going to pay for this right now, right? So if you don't teach them about there's PSLF right now, if you don't teach them about the income-based repayment plans, you're failing your students. That's how I feel, no doubt. So
I mean, I get
yeah,
that, but I think you can't capture that in one felt swoop in terms of just an exit interview. I think that this is something that has to be, you know, like you said, the sprinkle, right? It has to be sprinkled throughout. Students have to they have to understand the power of budgeting. They have to understand that budgeting is not a bad word. That budgeting actually is a very big advantage for them, right? They have to understand, compounding interest, what that looks like. Here's what you started out with in your first year. Here's what you're up to in your second year, right? If we're talking about the unsubsidized, right? Like things like that. I think they need to see it over time so that it sinks in, right? Like,
yeah.
so I think that's where SNMA does actually have like mega opportunities where they can really teach students about this stuff throughout. They have regional conferences, they have the national conference, and they have a whole bunch of other programming that they do. And I think, hey, do that, and you know, you'll you will reap the benefits as an organization. One, because the students who become alums will be more financially sound, number one. And two, they will give back if they're financially sound. But if they feel like
Oh yeah, no
I
doubt.
don't know what I'm doing, I got all of this debt and da da da.
Once they realize the tax benefits of these things, they'll be like, look, I'm
Exactly.
invested emotionally. I might as well
Yep.
invest myself
Exactly.
financially.
Yeah.
So
That's the
yo,
key.
listen up, everyone. Listen up. Listen up, everyone. Particularly if you're a program director and you listening, listen, I'm gonna tell you something right now. These students are special, yo. I'm serious. I'm not just these students are special, how they work, how they hustle. They all have a mission. I'm telling you right now, there's like I can't think of one student at the SNMA who is there without any type of mission.
Hmm.
And when I say mission, it's not like I just want to become a doctor. It's I want to become a doctor because I want to do this for
Hmm. Right.
family, community,
Hmm.
whatever it may be.
Reach.
The, these students are, I'm telling you, so program directors right now, like, listen to me. If you're looking for leaders, if you're looking for someone to make a difference in your program, look here. Look at the SNMA. Come, make sure you come into our, come into the exhibit hall, come to the pre-med fairs to get these pre-med students. I mean, we didn't even really talk about the pre-med. Like, listen, and the other thing too, I want to say, like the med students, like I know it's tough, right? It's tough. Like you always thinking about like, am I going to get into residency? What do I got to do to make sure I get into
Hmm.
residency? What do I got to do to make sure I do well for the next test? And you be at these SMA conferences and you be walking by these med students, or excuse me, these pre-meds, and these pre-meds are just looking for guidance
Hmm.
also, yo. It's all relative. I'm super proud of these pre-med students who
Yeah.
it costs them more actually. It costs them more to go to these events because, you know, where they're finding the money to
Where
pay
are
for
they
these
from?
things.
Right. They're not living on loans in the same way that medical students are, right? It's yeah,
And the medical students are in school.
right,
Do you know going to this conference is going to,
right,
you know, afford you
right.
certain types of information that'll help you out. Like going to being a pre-med and going to SNMA, you know, it could be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
daunting and stuff, but it's worth
Yeah.
it, man. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about the pre-med students because they do a great job too.
Yeah, they
I just want to
do.
say I'm
They
proud of them
do.
too.
The pre-meds, the pre-med portion of SNMA. So I used to be the National Pre-Medical Board member before I became Madam Chair. Um, so when I was in my second, going into my third year of medical school, I was pretty much in charge of the entire um, national pre medical effort or initiative. And so, just to see where, how far they've come now is, it's just been amazing. But, every year at the pre-medical luncheon, we get to see the students, those pre-meds who are, going to be matriculating into medical school. And it's just great, right? They do a pinning ceremony for those students. And it's just so great to see, like, you just get all these students who stand up, come and get their pins. And you're like, wow, like, the organization was a huge part of their story. And so these stories will kind of permeate throughout, right? So that's always great. I've seen pre-meds I've seen medical students go from being pre-med all the way going to, to medical school. I met Antonio Henry, right? Antonio Henry, he's at PCOM. He was one of my students in my medic program. Stacy Baua, a pre-med that went through my program. And now she's in her third year. So is Antonio in his third year. And then Morgan, what's Morgan's last name? Morgan Freeman.
I believe in God. I believe in me. Same person.
No, it's not Morgan Freeman. But Morgan, she's over at KCU, which is our alma mater. But she, she's also in her third year. So, just to see them like, go from that level of being pre-med and just wanting to get into medical school and finally getting to that place, or even with Stacy getting to, the point of being a regional director, a leader in the SNMA, a national leader, regional and national leader in the SNMA is like, it's truly amazing, and I can't forget my girl, Miracle Rogers, who is now the national president of the Student National Medical Association. She was also one of the medic students in my program. And now look at her. She's like the national president. She was also pre-medical board member the way that I was previously. And it's just amazing. Like, you never know who is before you, and that's why I always say to people, don't tell people that they're not going to make it. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who you're talking to. So it's just awesome to see. Awesome to see.
What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee. Yo, this is the end of this segment. I appreciate you for listening, but this ain't the end. If you want more, go ahead and click the next button on your favorite podcast app. Listen, that's next for more banter between me and Dr. Renee. That's next for more topics. That's next for more segments. Listen, did you hit next yet? Go ahead and click next. Hit it. Next. Peace.